Hello and welcome. So today, I thought I'd work on my journal some more and take you through my process of how I'm using it to plan a game. So the first spread is the location of where I'm thinking about placing my one-shot and the time I'm going to set it in. As you can see, I was contemplating basing the game on Mary Queen of Scots. But if you've seen my most recent videos, you'll know Anne Boleyn is the main protagonist of the game. I've also secured a printout of the White Tower that I can refer to later for inspiration, or even as a prompt. I really like vintage prints, and I was tempted to order that printout as a card, so I could stick it down. What I'm going to do now, though, is mount it on some black card with a nice white pencil border. I'm also going to move it away from the spine of the sketchbook, as it's getting a bit bent. I'm thinking about outlining the Mary Queen of Scots portrait in pen, as both Anne Boleyn and Thomas Cromwell are completed line drawings. I'm not sure what to put in as the annotation, next to the Tower of London card, but I'm thinking of making some more notes on the White Tower, and use this as a starting point to flesh out the rooms or dungeons some more. I've also got a better idea of traps I'm going to use, so I can annotate the treasure parchment with where I'm thinking of hiding these items and the rooms they could be in. The treasure card will also be properly stuck down too. I'm not going to mount it though. Instead, I may just do an outline in pen around it. This next page is one of my favourite pages, believe it or not. I really enjoyed making this fold out, maybe because it's a bit crafty. I want to make this spread a bit more colourful, with either pastels or coloured pencils. Watercolour or acrylic paint will make the paper too wrinkly. I don't want to affect the page behind it. As my seating instructions are circular, I want to move them down towards the bottom of the page, as it will leave a nice triangle shape for leaving annotations, or maybe an additional sketch. With the map on the other page, I'm not going to do much to it, but I do want to make the front cover a bit more lively. I may print something out and stick it on top, or just illustrate it myself. With a map, I will colour in some of the shrubbery with some green colouring pencils and shade in the dungeon walls some more. I can even draw a crest on the top left corner, but we'll see how adventurous I am. Next, we have the dreaded Thomas Cromwell. Here I'm thinking of writing out some character traits, what his motivations are, things like that. Pretty much how I would approach planning a character in a novel. I do want to do something with these character sheets, but I don't know what. I may print out some artwork and stick it to the other side of the paper, so it's not just plain white. On the other side, we have a whole page to fill, which I'm quite excited about. I'm thinking of maybe including some alternate endings here. I may note some ideas down for a spin-off game. Perhaps there is a game in the Rise of Cromwell coming up through the ranks of court. I'm sure I can write it so it's not boring. Maybe. Perhaps we can bring out some interesting backstory or lore that makes him the wizard he is today. I really like a good backstory. I may even write out some mini character prompt cards to accompany the game, so other people who want to GM it can get up to speed quickly without having to learn the actual Tudor history. Anne Boleyn, our protagonist, is next. I think we can definitely have some fun with this page. Like with Cromwell, I'm going to flash out more of her backstory, what shaped her into the person she is in this game. As she is a cleric, I want to research the gods she will follow in more detail. I'm looking forward to researching any obscure lore I can bring out. Like with the other drawings, I'm going to mount her portrait on a card with a nice border. I'm still debating on how I'll write this in the sketchbook, in terms of the annotations. I may just use my own handwriting, but to me it's quite boring. I'd rather use a more creative font. But also, that could take a lot more time. So we'll see. Now I treat my journal like I would a sketchbook, so it may not follow other traditional D&D journals in terms of layout and design. The way I view my journal is that it's contributing to a larger project or final piece, which is my game. So it's very exploratory and a little messy. Each page is essentially taking me a step forward in completing the project, be it designing a character, the look and feel of the prototype, which in this case is a foldable zine, and the dungeon layout. The order in which I'm tackling these things is unique to me and my process, so it may look different for someone else. For example, they may want to start the dungeon first and then build everything around that. Or more like me, they may already have a character in mind and want to focus on that first. As time goes on, I may begin to scan some of these sketches into my computer and manipulate them more. This would also be quite useful for creating cardboard miniatures. So yeah, the assets I'm creating here will eventually have multiple uses. This is why I try not to be too much of a perfectionist. As I'm designing this, things will change and I may have an idea for something else. So if you take anything away from this video, be it that. Just keep moving forward and don't get hung up on making the ideal version of anything. What you think is ideal one day may change from the next. If you think back to the beginning of my journal, my main protagonist was a completely different queen to one I've chosen now. but I've still chosen to include the artwork in the book, as it's all part of my process and got me to where I am now. To be honest, at the moment I don't see myself doing a complete 180 on the characters. Thomas Cromwell and Anne Boleyn are here to stay. However, things like my traps could change, for example the Shrieking Head. I wouldn't be too bothered if that did happen though, as I can always use that trap in another game. Another thing to consider when using a journal is that you get to see an accumulation of ideas as time goes on. For me, I like to physically see the progress I've made, which is why I've tried to not just keep notes on my computer, but write them out. The drawings will eventually form part of my game as they are character art, but for now, they're a nice bit of decoration for my sketchbook. The next part of my game, I will focus on smaller encounters here and there, so basically minions of Cromwell and potentially a few more traps, but we'll see. In terms of sketchbook recommendations for this project, I wanted more of a bookish sketchbook, so one that was sewn together, not ring-bounded. Hardcover is a must, due to all the paper I'm sticking into it. I also wanted it to be quite sturdy, in terms of wear and tear, in case I ever took it out with me. Again, this is just personal preference. Some people may prefer working with a softer sketchbook, as they want it to feel like a notepad. Anyway, I'd like to know what your processes are, and how you go about creating things. Be it a novel, game, or music. Do you like to write your ideas on paper, or do you keep them all on your phone or laptop? Right, so that's all for this week's video, and I'll see you in the next one.